Scott Hicko's 50th article, Scripture Challenge, number 2, Song 139:16. Free will or God's book. Does God plan and execute everything, or are some things left to chance, or even worse, human free will? Today I present Song 139:16. Your eyes saw my embryo. In my days all of them were written upon your scroll. The days they were formed, when there was not one of them. So in the above verse it is said that God has formed all of our days and has written them on his scroll book before one of them came to be. How often do we take God at his word? It would be good enough to disprove human free will by God writing every day in his book. This is because what is written cannot be erased. If God wrote it, then it's God's action and choice, not the humans. However, the
Psalmist
goes a step further in saying that all our days were formed when there was not one of them. This means that God planned every day up until our last day, before we were even born. This means that everything that happens in our lives has been decided by God and not by our choice. How can we determine what happens in our lives if it's already been decided before we were even born? We don't. The truth of the matter is that we make choices that God has planned for us to make. This verse goes hand in hand with Romans 9:11-13. For not as yet being born nor putting into practice anything good or bad, that the purpose of God may be remaining as a choice, not out of acts, but of him who is calling. It was declared to her that the greater shall be slaving for the inferior, according as it is written, Jacob I love, yet Esau I hate. You see, God decides our lives before we do anything good or bad, because it is God's choice. The good and bad things that we do are a result of him who is calling. It's God's choice and not out of our acts. Our acts are simply a result of God's choice. Our choices play out on the purpose that God planned long before we were born. Yet people still insist that God is not God and say that their free will determines their destiny. Even worse, God has to adjust his plan based on human choice, therefore making human free will the false idol that is more powerful than God and the ultimate source of human experience and consequence. Human free will is a lie, and we must understand that God is not a human being. He is connected to his creation in a special way. He is connected to his creation in a special way that he gives life, breath, and life to all. He gives life, breath, and all to all. Acts 17:26. Back to Song 139:16. If God formed each and every day of our life, as Scripture clearly says, then think of what is included in those days. Have you ever gone through a day in which evil was not present? Of course, some days are worse than others. However, could God form a day without factoring evil into those days? What about death? Think about all the factors that go into a person dying here on earth. How can God form a person's days if they are dead? My point in asking these questions is, does God Is God in control of when a person dies? Well, of course he does. I have already given you a verse that states that God gives us breath. If you don't believe that one, you won't believe the others. So if God controls when a person dies and breathes their last, then he would have to control every aspect of a person's life leading up to that point. Otherwise, death could come as a surprise. Not so, because God is God. Let's give God his place as the ultimate placer and subjector, and us our place as the creature. We live our lives the best we can while taking into account that all is of God, and everything we do is an unfolding of God's plan from the beginning. Love, grace, and peace to you all. Have a wonderful day and wonderful night, and God bless you all.